Russell Wilson in 2024, man.
I'm glad this show's wrapping up soon.
Times have fallen, how times have come, man. My heart broke the other day when he was cut because immediately I was struck with the video on my timeline on Twitter of you saying that's your quarterback for the next 8 years.
That's what he told me. He lied to me.
And I said, damn. How much has it been? 2? I was like, sheesh. How many teams could Russell Wilson realistically start on in 2024? These are the teams I wrote down.
The answer is 3.
3? Okay.
I have 3.
Are we not count? I'm not counting Bears and Commanders because they're taking quarterbacks.
Oh, well, I actually... All right, so 2.
The Steelers, they came out and said they're not interested.
Mm-hmm.
So I removed them.
Oh, I did not take into account that.
You didn't... Who?
The Steelers.
Because I still think he could start on them.
That
okay.
was the question.
But the Steelers, they came out and said that they're not interested. They'd rather roll with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, and that's why their franchise is dirt.
And they're a pretty historic franchise.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
I'd continue.
Either way, they would have been 9-7.
That's why, for me, the Steelers, I will take them out on this list because if I know that it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. The Raiders, that's the one that, if they don't get a quarterback, maybe they this is more like an ownership move. Like Mark Davis is like, hey, look at the numbers. Like Russell Wilson was good. And then the Raiders are forced to have Russell Wilson. But I think it'd be a mistake. The Patriots, if they draft a quarterback and you need a bridge.
You'd rather have Mac Jones or Russell Wilson?
Right now? Oh, man. I'd rather have Jacoby Brissett. So I'd rather sign Jacoby Brissett, and I'd rather have him. The Commanders, same thing with the bridge thing. I think the Falcons either trade up for a quarterback or get Kirk Cousins. And then the Minnesota Vikings, do they get Russ? I don't know. So for me, it's really only 2 teams. Actually, 1. It's the Raiders. That I think like day 1 starter, it's really just the Raiders. And I think that would be a desperation move. At this point in his career, I think he's a backup quarterback.
Well, teams that he could start on, the Raiders, the Steelers, the Patriots, and the Falcons. Those are the teams that he could start.
We're not saying the Giants because of Daniel Jones' contract.
Correct.
Okay.
Even though you think like between Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones,
I would take
better?
Daniel Jones.
Okay. Wow. Times have really fallen.
I don't really care.
I had the Giants on my list. I think it's close.
He could start on the Giants.
Tyrod Taylor or Russell Wilson?
Maybe some
Russell
better
Wilson.
pocket awareness than DJ.
Because Tyrod was better than Daniel Jones last year.
He played 3 games, however many games?
He played well.
He did play well.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
He played well.
I'm talking about Daniel Jones.
I was talking about Tyrod. Tyrod played really well. Yeah.
Anyways, it's sad. It really is to have this fall off from grace, to be one of the best quarterbacks in the game, to not be wanted. It's tough times for Russell Wilson.
Are you about to cry?
No, I'm a grown man. But at the same time, I'm hurting. I would love a quarterback to stay with us longer than 2 seasons. The picture that I put up of all the quarterbacks that I've seen since Peyton Manning, that's been a reality. It's the truth. The Broncos just can't hit on quarterbacks. God willing, this is our last time trying to chase one, whether it is trading up and getting a Drake May, Jaden Daniels, or drafting JJ or Bo Nix or Michael Penix at pick 12. It has been tough times for the Denver Broncos. We are taking on an insane amount of dead money by cutting Russell Wilson.
M's, not your money, though.
So it is not my money. Shout out to Walmart, one of the greatest corporations alive. I just don't know what to do with the Broncos right now except put my blind faith in Sean Payton. He did it once. Fine. But we're still in cap hell. We have no money. I don't know what to do, what we're going to do. It's just going to be an ugly season, and I don't know the next time the Broncos are going to be good, legitimately.
I think the bright spot is you have Sean Payton. So if you do go...
And that this was the correct decision to make.
This was the correct decision to make, because Russell Wilson, his time was up. I don't think him and Sean Payton really ever saw eye to eye.
Sean Payton was a bastard to him, though.
We said this in the beginning, that the relationships or the personalities don't really mesh together. Also, there's been rumors that Cortland Sutton's available for trade. Jerry Jeudy could be moved on from. So that's the thing that sucks in this position is, on one hand, Sean Payton, I believe in to be able to develop a quarterback. He's been one of the best offensive minds in the NFL for 15 plus years. He's been sensational, especially when you look at the days with the Saints and Drew Brees. But on the other hand, whatever quarterback's going to be coming into this position it's going to be a bad position. Marvin Mims was their first overall pick, taken in the second round. He was not able to develop. Sean Payton had some very interesting words about him too, just talking about him as a returner and saying, well, Jerry Jeudy plays his spot. So if Jerry Jeudy's back, I don't think we're going to see a lot more of Marvin Mims on the field. And the rest of the receiving core is really beat up. Tim Patrick coming off back-to-back injuries, as I mentioned about Courtland Sutton possibly being moved on. And to save money, you got to pay Garrett Bowles soon too. So you have to make a decision on him, whether that's potentially trading him to get some more draft capital and relieving you of cap room. So whatever quarterback comes into this Denver situation, you have the head coach, but you really don't have any weapons around him. And I don't think everything's even, but I look at this past draft class where we were talking about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and who's in a better position. And I favored Bryce Young because I believe in Frank Reich. I believed in the offensive staff and the coaching they had around him, but the weapons around him were pretty terrible. I probably overlooked that, and we saw how terrible Bryce Young looked. Now, give Bobby Slowick and the Texans credit because they overperformed, I think, everybody's expectations.
Oh, yeah.
But the Broncos are really starting from scratch now. You brought in Sean Payton last year. Maybe it felt like 1 year you could compete, but this really feels like a complete rebuild. So I think it was the right move to move off of Russ. I had 4 teams on my list: the Pats, Steelers. They're not, going after them anymore. The Raiders and the Falcons. I think Russ can go on a team and kind of do what he did for the Broncos, where statistically it'll look fine. I think he can complete around 66% of his passes. I don't think he's going to put the ball in harm's way a ton, but it's going to be a lot of checkdowns. It's not going to be a ton of explosive plays. He's going to have some mobility. He's going to make magic happen once in a while and be like, oh my God, this Russ is back. But over the course of 17 games, it feels unrealistic that he could lead a team into the playoffs.
The grass ain't always greener on the other side. And Russell Wilson is ending to Seattle in that tenure. He went to the owner and he wanted their GM and he wanted Pete Carroll fired because.
Do you think he wanted Pete fired?
No, that's what was
been
reported.
It was reported,
No,
but
that was true.
Russ did just go back to Seattle and hang out with Pete Carroll after he was announced that he was not going to be the coach anymore.
It doesn't mean that they're not cool, but
let me ask you a question. If we were on the show together and you go to Joel and you're like, yo, I don't want Drew on the show anymore. And would you anticipate that I'd be cool with you still? Would I anticipate that you'd be cool with me?
Well, obviously not, but it is widely reported and known that it is a fact that Russ went to ownership and he wanted Pete Carroll and Josh Snyder
Media,
fired.
man. What do they really know?
Well, that's what reported. I mean, there's more evidence leaning one way than the other way you're trying to spin it.
I'm not trying to spin it any other way other than, hey, what I know recently is that Russ did go celebrate Pete Carroll.
As of recently, and then when he went back to Seattle, they didn't talk at all when they matched up in that matchup. There was quotes. There was Pete Carroll taking jabs at Russell Wilson after he got traded the entire way.
Was it?
Yes.
Interesting.
There were jabs at him thrown in the media about how now they could finally run their offense how they want to run it.
Mm-hmm.
Because
and we see how well they've done.
Well, yeah, Geno Smith had a great year.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Shout out to Geno.
Yeah, Geno Smith had a great
How
year.
many playoffs wins?
Ultimately,
Same as the Broncos?
Russell Wilson, he went to ownership and he wanted the coach and the owner, the GM fired. And ironically enough, the coach he was asking to replace Pete Carroll was Sean Payton. He wanted Sean Payton to be hired in Seattle. He goes to the Broncos. Sean Payton is there, and Sean Payton doesn't like him. And I think this is a different situation for Russ where he's always had control. First year in Denver, you give him a massive contract before he plays it down for you. He has a bunch of things catered to him, has his own offense, has his own office, all these other things. And now he's in a position where no team in the NFL really wants him. And I don't know what's next for Russell Wilson because he is the first quarterback in over a decade to finish a season with a above 95 passer rating, but a negative EPA per play on pass plays on the year. So the box score stats show that, he was somewhat solid, but he was actually terrible at running an offense.
Good old EPA, man.
You have these other percentages that, aren't EPA that actually show how much he limited the Broncos offense. 27% of Russ's passes were behind the line of scrimmage. 62% of his passes were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And he only threw 26% of his passes between the 5 to 15 yard area down the field. With Russell Wilson, you cannot call or design an offense to the middle of the field. He is not going through his progressions and hitting open guys and running an offense. He's oftentimes getting scared from pressure and checking it down. It was just really hard to run an offense with him. And the complete truth of the Broncos is that you need to go into a complete rebuild. I mean, that's what's best for the franchise. And this was always a money thing. I don't think this was a Sean Payne doesn't like Russell Wilson thing. If Russell Wilson was a great quarterback still, Sean Payne would suck it up because Russell Wilson gives me something that a plethora of other quarterbacks in the NFL cannot give me, and that's elite quarterback play. But because he wasn't good, that's the big reason why they moved on from him. And maybe it now makes teams hesitant to trade and then pay quarterbacks coming from a situation where everything was catered to them to an extent. I think what was really telling is that Dave Canales, who worked with Russell Wilson for a decade in Seattle, he flat out said in an interview with Kay Adams that this situation is not for him with the Panthers. And you get that because Bryce Young is your quarterback. But Dave Canales shut it down immediately. And then he said...
Well, okay, continue.
Dave Canales shut it down immediately. And then after, he talked about Russ's time in Denver. And he said... It's what happened. The film is the film. And I feel like around the league, people know that he's just not a good quarterback anymore.
I mean, again, obviously it wouldn't happen because number 1 overall pick is Bryce Young. That's why I feel like that even asking him that question is a little absurd. But
at this point, though, Russell Wilson is like a mentor backup quarterback. I think that is like the best role for him.
He's turning into Andy Dalton.
I mean, all the teams that we mentioned that he could start on, like they're either teams that are going to draft a quarterback or teams that have no option whatsoever, and it's like a last resort desperation move.
I don't know. I don't think Atlanta is like the worst situation, or in terms of are they desperate? Yeah, you could argue. Pittsburgh, are they desperate? You can make the argument. Patriots, desperate. Most definitely. They are a desperate team. The Raiders, yeah, you're right. 100%, man.
But are those teams...
A lot of desperate teams.
New England needs a quarterback bad. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they're desperate to make a move because I don't think they're trying to win. I think they understand it's a rebuild.
I think the only team where I feel like fringe desperation...
The Raiders are probably the most desperate because they genuinely believe they're in win-now mode, which, listen, they won, what, 7, 8 games last year? 7 and 10, 8 and 9. And they're not just them. I've had multiple of their fans in my mentions saying that this is a team that is going to win now, in reference to possibly trading Devontae Adams. I don't see it with the Raiders, but of course they do. Antonio Pierce, I think he's going to be able to get the most out of this team. So if there was one move or one team out there that Russ could go to, and it's a situation that's trying to win and it's not in a rebuild outside the Steelers, it would probably be Las Vegas.
You know the punch in the balls that would be him going to the Raiders and him playing well?
Wow.
I don't think...
You might have to honestly check me into a mental institution.
You know, the interesting
does he get?
Minimum.
Like
That's what he said.
Oh, really?
Like he's open to just getting the minimum.
Like, I was going to say like maybe 10.
I was thinking 15, in fact.
He's getting paid so much money from the dead money that the Broncos have that he really doesn't have to have money be his primary motivation. The Raiders, an interesting tidbit about them is that Luke Getsy is their OC. Luke Getsy comes from Green Bay, where he worked with Nathaniel Hackett. So off of Nathaniel Hackett's experience, I don't think there's much of a push to go get Russ from them.
That's a good point.
But that's why I said like that's more of like an ownership Mark Davis. Let's bring in a name.
Yeah.
Let's bring in Russell Wilson. But I don't know. The ending to his career, I think it is pretty sad because this is the worst ending that I've seen to a Hall of Fame quarterback's career, potentially.
Newman.
I think what's happening to Russ is a little bit worse.
You think?
I also think Russ's peak was longer.
And I don't think Cam is a Hall of Fame quarterback.
That's fair.
Fair.
Yeah. Because Russ was
a great
elite.
quarterback.
Russ was elite for multiple years. Yeah. You know, Cam didn't have the stretch, in my opinion, that Russ did.
I'm with you.
Now, yeah, the only one I could think of is Kurt Warner, really, where in the middle of his career,
he was
terrible. And then he bounced back and redeemed himself.
Good for him.
We'll see what happens with Russ.
Great story, Kurt Warner.